when I just started with Tarek, a kind of dating, and then he would call me every day a few times. And I thought, what is he doing? Is he checking on me? Really? I started to feel paranoid. And then I realized living here longer is that that's what Palestinians do. They just call each other. Where are you? What are you doing?
Welcome to the podcast Stories from Palestine. My name is Kristel and I invite you to join me every week for interesting, inspiring and unexpected stories from Palestine. 7 years ago, I moved from the Netherlands to Palestine to be with my Palestinian husband. We live with our 2 children in Beit Safafa, a town between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. We run a cafe and a bar in Bethlehem. And before the pandemic, I used to take tourists on alternative tours to learn about the reality of life for Palestinians in the West Bank. As the world is in lockdown due to the pandemic and we cannot receive any tourists at the moment, I decided to share stories from Palestine as a virtual tour. And maybe one day when the world opens up again, you will be inspired to come and discover the beauty of Palestine yourself. I created the website storiesfrompalestine.info and the Facebook page Stories from Palestine, where you can find links, photos and background information. And now, get ready for a new episode of Stories from Palestine. The episodes of this podcast are sometimes about history, about cultural heritage, sometimes there are monologues, sometimes there are interviews. But I also like to talk about the traditions, about the local culture, and about my personal experiences here. And in today's episode, I talk to my friend Najuan, who is a Palestinian living in Holland. So I live here in her country, and she lives in mine. And we like to babble about our experiences and about all the cultural differences. This was our first experience recording in a long-distance call, but we had so much fun doing it.
Najuan, how is the weather in my country?
It's very cold now. At this moment, I'm wearing a sweater.
But I heard from my parents that it was like a nice September month, like a warm month.
It is. Yeah, I mean, during the day it was very nice. It was sunny, but for me it was a little bit cold. For my standards, it's still a little bit like it's not summer anymore, you know?
At least you cool down. We've been having a heat wave for 3-4 weeks, and right now it's not so hot like during the day, but it's humid. And you feel like, there's no this breeze in the night. I wish I was in Holland.
I know, not only for this reason, huh?
Oh God, I miss it. Like because of the pandemic, and I haven't been to the Netherlands since December. And usually when I go in the summer, it's really 2 months of relief, of green and water, and enjoying the cooler weather. And now we never had any break. Like, you didn't make it to Palestine?
No, last time it was last year in June. So it's been a year and a couple of months now. Yeah, it's very difficult for me. I just miss being with my family.
Hey, Najuan, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and how did you end up in my country?
Oh, yeah. My name is Najuan and I am from Palestine. And I have been living in the Netherlands more than 5 years now. And I end up living here because my husband is Dutch. I'm a social worker and I also have a master's degree in conflict resolution. I studied and lived in the US for a couple of years. I'm working on organizing dialogue groups for international parents here in the Netherlands.
What is something that comes up in your talk regularly about living in the Netherlands?
Yeah, we focus mainly about having a child in the Netherlands, not in general as a person just living in the Netherlands, more from the mothering experience, raising a child with more than one language, and how the healthcare system here is quite different from most other countries. Ideas about how to put the baby to sleep, breastfeeding, and all these different issues.
Can you give an example of personal example of your daughter's name is Ferial. She's almost
Yeah,
2. And
yeah.
what do you feel is different about raising her in the Netherlands than if you had been in Palestine with your own family?
If I take like an easy example, if we go back to the weather issue, when I take her, for example, to the playground, she's mainly the only child who is kind of like overdressed, and all the other children are with their t-shirts and shorts, and so that's kind of always funny and for me to see.
I had the exact opposite, is that when it was summer and I put just like one onesie or one shirt on my kids, and everybody would be like, Haram, it's cold. You should wear something more. And I'm like, now look outside. It's super hot here.
It is, yeah, it is very different. It was for us like this between me and my husband that when she was still a baby, she was born in the beginning of the autumn, and we were recommended to keep the window open. But I felt like, no, that's very cold. We have to close the window. It's too cold for her. So it was a constant argument also. So it's kind of funny
Is
that
the
way.
weather
Yeah.
in general a big issue for you, the weather in the Netherlands?
Yeah, it has a big impact on my daily life, I would say. That, for example, I wouldn't leave the house without checking the weather app because I learned that if it's sunny outside, you cannot trust the weather because in 10 minutes there would be a storm, like rains pouring like cats and dogs. So I learned I have to be prepared. And beside that, what the difficulty is that the winter is so long and you can deal with the temperature, but the fact that it's long and dark is very difficult for me.
Yeah, that's true. But what you have in the Netherlands is that the summers are really long, where it gets really
Yeah,
early
this is
daylight, and then until almost 10:30, 11 in June, you have the daylight. Here it's always almost the same. Like it gets light between 6 and 7, and it gets dark between 7 and 8 all year long. There's just a little shift in it.
No, I always say that for me, the summer here is like really like heaven. My mood immediately changes towards the end of March because you start seeing all the flowers blooming, and you can go outside and be more out in
Go on
general.
your
And
bike.
yes, oh yeah. And especially the fact what you said that the day is very long, that you in one day you can have 2 days that you can go to work and like have a working day, and afterwards another half a day of just going out and enjoying because you still have light until 11.
How do you like biking? Did you do biking before when you were in Palestine?
Yeah, sure. I grew up with, yeah, I always kind of had a bike, and I learned from an early age to bike. But of course, in Palestine, it's not very common. Maybe nowadays it's more than before, but here it's kind of a must. And some places, if you want to get there, the bus will take much longer than taking the bike. And sometimes the bus doesn't even get most places. So you need the bike, and I love it. But I had to learn. I mean, I knew how to bike, but at that time we were living in Utrecht, and Utrecht is kind of, I think, one of the biggest bike cities in the world. And for me, it's funny. You only think, okay, when you want to ride a bike, you just need to know how to do it technically. But no, like in the Netherlands, there are kind of rules that you need to follow because otherwise you're like, yeah, you easily can get into an accident. And I saw a couple of them in front of me. And what's really funny is that there is a rush hour in the bike lane.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
so in the first couple of months, I really was avoiding the rush hour because it was so scary for me. It was
Yeah,
so busy, crazy.
yeah. But now you feel more confident on the bike.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel much
Did
more
you take
confident.
Virial on the bike?
Yes, and that was also a process, of course, because again, as an international mother or like a non-Dutch mother, I didn't feel comfortable enough to have her in a bike without a helmet.
Oh
And
yeah,
here,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not really common,
No,
My husband takes her on the bike and he never puts on helmet for her. But this is also something I needed to get used to. I was a little bit scared at the beginning, but now it goes more smoothly.
Yeah, I guess that when you go and live in another country, you have to get used to so many different things and different ways of how people do stuff.
But when I moved here, of course, people are extremely friendly, but at the same time, I also learned they cannot easily be your friend. They're friendly, but they're not open to be friends. They have their own friends already, they have their network, and other people who didn't go to high school with them or study with them, it's very difficult to get into the circle. That's my experience. I don't know how you experienced that in Palestine, or how was it for you as a Dutch living here in the Netherlands?
It's a huge contradiction or contrast, maybe. When you come as a foreigner and you visit Palestine, the very first thing that you realize is the hospitality of people, the openness. You just walk in the street and you get 20 invitations to come and drink tea or to come and drink coffee. And people are genuinely interested. They also really want to tell their story. And also, when you are a foreigner in Palestine, I feel that once you made connection with someone, they expect you to keep in touch, to see you the next day, to see you the next week. And what I realized when I was back in the Netherlands, I could see that with the refugees, for example. They came to the Netherlands, they start to talk to somebody. For example, there is an activity, and they come to the activity and they meet people on a dinner or something in the neighborhood. They make friends, they think, and then they start calling them to make a new appointment the next day or 2 days later. And the Dutch person is like, what does he want from me? We just talked yesterday or the day before. Like, maybe
Yeah.
if you call in a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. So I realized that here it is more spontaneous. I mean, when I say spontaneous, really, this is one of the reasons why my husband doesn't want to move to the Netherlands, is he always says, it's not a spontaneous country. Everything is organized. In Palestine, no. Nobody has an agenda. Like literally, I don't know any Palestinian. Maybe in their work, they would have an agenda for meetings and appointments, but in their private life, absolutely not. And people would just call, Shu, Waynak, Shubitsawi, where are you? What are you doing? And then they will just
Yeah.
go with the flow. You wake up in the morning and you don't know what your day will look like, but you are sure it will be full of events. And when Tade came to the Netherlands and he saw my mom's calendar for the whole month, he looked at it and he was like, that's not fun. She already knows for the whole month what she's going to do.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And this is something I'm struggling with. I always had an agenda, also before moving to the Netherlands, but not for social events. Agenda is only for work. If I tell you now, look at my agenda, it's already booked for like the next 4 weeks. Every weekend there is something, and
Yeah.
it gives me a feeling of like, wow, I'm already so full, busy. There's no room for just calling, but also no one calls you just to chit chat, for example. Where are you? What are you doing? Exactly what you just said.
I mean, in the Netherlands, you could end up feeling really lonely. Here, no. And then also here, everybody lives with the family. We live with my family in law. They live upstairs, we live downstairs. My brother in law still lives in the house. My sister in law doesn't live far away. So every Friday, they come here, all the family, and we spend together. We make a big lunch. There is a saying in Arabic, you have to help me about that. Something like, if you stay with people for more than 40 days, you become like them.
من عاشر الأم 40 يوم صار منه.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Something
yeah,
along these lines also, yeah.
you've been there for
Yeah.
more than that, and I've been here for more than that. So at some point, yeah, you really start to take some of the habits, and that's also good. I can see it now with my children. They are growing up here. They are Palestinian kids. They don't look like Palestinian kids because they are so blonde. And this is also very funny and confusing when they start to speak Arabic, and people are really surprised because they don't expect that. But they are already taking a lot of the habits here. Like, if I raised my kids in the Netherlands, I know they will sit on the table until the dinner is ready. They have to finish their plate and everything will be quiet and calm. Here, kids run around while food is on the table. I see literally moms going with a spoon of food behind the children to just get a few spoons in their mouth. People here, when they finish the food, they leave the table and then they go sit outside, they drink tea, they drink coffee. In a way, in the Netherlands, maybe it's more rigid. It's like you have to sit on the table. This is the way we do it. When we go to the Netherlands, I always feel a little bit kind of shame, like they run around, they are loud, they are louder than other kids, or they will. We went to the municipality and they will just climb on the desk of the clerk at the municipality. I'm like, no, no, guys, you can't do that here. In Palestine, they think that's cute, but here they don't appreciate it.
For
Yeah.
example, with my daughter, I know that if we go to Palestine, she will be fed like 24 hours. Everyone will be offering her food like nonstop. And for that reason, I'm kind of happy that we are here, that I can keep a structure, because otherwise it will be like a huge mess.
Yeah, Palestinians show their love to children through sweets and chocolate. And if you tell them, no, she had enough, they tell you, Haram, that's bad. What are you? What
Exactly.
kind of bad mother are you? Are you just telling no to your children for something nice and sweet? Because,
Yeah.
there's a huge
Yep.
difference in food tradition in the Netherlands or in Palestine.
What Dawali? Oh, I missed that one from my mom's. How she make it? I make it sometimes, but it's like no, no. But I love most of the dishes, of course, and I try also to cook more Palestinian oriented dishes, not the complicated ones, of course. I don't have time for it. But here in the Netherlands, I noticed that there's a big culture of sandwiches. Like sandwiches are very popular here. That for lunch you would have a sandwich and it's a big thing. But for us, in Palestine, like lunch is a main meal and it has to be a warm meal. And dinner, most of the time you skip it in Palestine.
Yeah.
But here, no, dinner is the main meal. The fact that also in Palestine, like you cook for like 10 extra people. Or my mom would always cook more because you never know who will end up coming and joining you, and you can always keep it for the day after. And here, it doesn't exist. Like you cook a meal per meal,
Yeah.
and leftovers. It doesn't exist, and it's kind of difficult for me when I go to if I'm invited for dinner and I see like the food was calculated, I don't feel comfortable to. I always feel like, oh, I don't want to take too much.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
because they're cooking too little. It's just because I'm used to so many different dishes on the table. So I can just eat whatever I want. And I'm sure that everyone will have enough. Here also, everyone will have enough. But just the
Just
fact that
enough.
I'm used to, that my eye is used to it, you know?
Yeah, I remember my mom used to really ask if we had friends playing, who is staying for dinner, because she wanted to make sure she had the right amount of potatoes, and she will count. Every person has 3 or 4 potatoes, something. And you are right, it's true. She will cook exactly the amount that we think we need. And if there was somebody else will come by, we will not have enough. And that never happens here in Palestine. I'll tell you something. Last weeks, we've had workers, people who were coming to fix and renovate our house. Every day, my mother in law made rada, which is the lunch, right? She made
Yeah,
rada
yeah.
for everybody, the painter, the carpenter, all the people. Can you imagine in the Netherlands that they are coming to fix your house and they're working and you feed them every day a warm meal? No.
I I think if you will offer them food, they will look at you like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I offer them coffee or a cup of water, and they like are kind of like surprised. Or also, sometimes my husband is kind of looking at me. No, they don't need this. They kind of cover it. They arrange it themselves. Yeah.
I also remember very vividly in the beginning when I lived here, if I visited people and we had, at first you get a huge lunch, then they serve you coffee, and then tea, and then fruits and sweets, and there's
No, coffee at the end.
coffee in the end.
Coffee at the end,
I
Kristel.
think we used to get two times coffee after the food, and then
Mm,
tea, and then another
yeah.
coffee. Yeah, I learned somehow that if you get your second cup of coffee, it means that, okay, now you can leave. But when you want to leave, they will tell you, Pedri, which means that's early. And in the beginning, I thought, like, oh my God, I'm leaving too early. I should stay longer. And I felt a bit shame or something until I realized years later that Bedri just a way of saying that, you're always welcome. Don't leave so early. But it doesn't mean something negative. It's
Then you have to
positive.
stay.
Yeah.
No, the things that I learned about visiting people is that when you go to visit anyone, it's very impolite to stay with your jacket on. That you have to take your jacket off as soon as you come in.
Yeah.
And in Palestine, we just stay with our jackets on because usually the houses are not that warm in the winter. So you just want to stay cozy with your jacket. But here it's no, it kind of gives them a feeling that you're not comfortable, that you're about to leave. So I learned to take off my jacket.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also to get used to the fact that when I want to leave, no one will tell me Badri.
No.
And it's kind of like every time it's weird to me.
Yeah.
I say I'm gonna leave. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wel thuis.
Yeah.
Kind of waiting for this remark of no, maybe you can stay longer. No, never comes.
There was a Palestinian guy who was just new in the Netherlands since a few months, I think. And somebody asked him if he wanted to drink something. And he said no. And then he never got anything to drink because when you say no to a Dutch person, it means no. But in Palestine, when they ask you, do you want something? Then you say no in the beginning, a kind of politeness. And then at some point, they will keep pushing you. Come on, no, have something to drink. What do you want to drink? And then the second, third time, you'll say, like, okay, I'll have something. So this guy in the beginning didn't know that. So he never got anything to drink.
If you say no, no one is going to insist on you on anything, No is no.
Exactly. There's no insisting like here. Exactly. Yeah. The same with in the end of the meal that you feel that you finished already two plates and they'll just put another piece of chicken on your plate. Yeah. Eat more. Yeah. Najuan, you learned Dutch very quickly. I mean, we're speaking English now because we have people listening to our podcast who don't know Dutch or Arabic. I have to say and give you this compliment because I've been coming and going to Palestine since 12 years, living here since 7 years, and I managed to make a small conversation and understand what people say, but I never managed to get to the level that you are. When you speak Dutch, you use words like, oh my God, how did she know these words? So you are really good. But what do you think about the Dutch language? What's your experience with it?
Thank you for the positive feedback about my language. I'm always insecure about it, of course, but you helped me a lot with it also to get more confident because when you start learning a new language, you want to have people giving you positive feedback, and this helps a lot. I mean, to my feeling, I'm still learning and I make a lot of mistakes still, but I got to a level where I don't mind anymore. I just go for it and I use the language that I know. And the thing is that I already spoke three languages when I start learning Dutch. And for me, I was never really motivated to learn the language properly as the other languages that I learned. So I always thought, no, I just want to learn it so I can manage. I don't want to be fluent. And this is, I think, influenced my learning process. Dutch language is I think it's one of the most difficult languages. Of course, Arabic is also very difficult. But for me, what's difficult is that it's very different from the other languages that I speak. Maybe it's similar to English in the words. With vocabulary, it's easier for me, but with the grammar, it's extremely difficult. It's very different. And the logic is non logic. A lot of exceptions, a lot of verbs which are exactly written the same, pronounced the same with different meanings. A lot of synonyms also. It's a very rich language that sometimes I feel like every Dutch person has his own language. Like you use a set of words that my husband wouldn't use.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's kind of like
Yeah.
challenging. Yes, that's what I noticed. It's very rich. It's very beautiful in that sense, but it also makes it more difficult. But it's funny that I also learned some words which are similar in Dutch and
Oh,
in
yeah.
Arabic, but with different meanings.
Give an example.
For example, the word zinnig, you know? That zinnig in Dutch means important, and in Arabic it means, this bad smell of an egg or of a chicken, cooked chicken. And yeah, for a lot of people, I think it's very cultural. This zinnig, I think it's only Arabic oriented word.
In Dutch,
But
I would use zinnig for it's useful. Yeah, it's a useful thing.
oh,
And
okay,
zinnig
yeah,
here, it's
yeah,
true. My husband sometimes says it to the kids about their behavior that it's zinnig.
that's true. Also, yeah,
Yeah. You know what I found so
that's
beautiful about
funny.
the Arabic language is that you always wish each other kind of blessings. So in the morning when they say Sabah al khair, a morning of blessings, and then they answer Sabah al nur, a morning of light. Or there is so many ways to say, for example, when you want to stop the bus in Palestine to get off, you tell the bus driver, Yatik al afia. To stop the bus, you tell the bus driver, may God give you health. That's beautiful. When I get out of the shower, my
Yeah.
husband tells me Naiman, and I have to answer him Alayinam Aleki or Aleik, not Aleki. That's God may give you the same. I never really understood the exact translation for Naiman, but it's also some sort of blessing for being clean and being in a good shape, or after cutting your hair, also they say it, or shaving a beard. And we don't have that. Like, I remember coming to Holland after been living here for a longer time, getting out of the shower, waiting for somebody to tell me Naiman, and nobody said anything. Yeah.
But I like with the word يعطيك العافية, it kind of like we say it so often to people you see in the street working or in the supermarket, and here sometimes I almost want to say it, because I'm so used to it, especially if I see someone who looks like more coming from our region. But then I stop myself because like, okay. But I learned in Dutch you say werkse,
Werkse.
which is
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
similar.
Yeah, werkse.
Yeah.
If somebody goes
So
to
I
work,
learned
you
that.
would say that, like, yeah, have a good day of work. Werkse. Yeah, I forgot about that. You see? You can also forget your own language. I have a last question before we call it a day, which is actually about the current situation with the pandemic. I just was thinking about that, like the different approaches of our governments or of our authorities towards it, because you still have your parents here and you hear from them how the things are going. And back in Holland, what can you say about that?
Oh yeah, it's a huge difference. I mean, every time I talk to my mom and I tell her, yeah, I just got back from the city center. I just got back from the supermarket. And she said, "What? You can just go easily." Yeah, and here everything is open. It's very rare to see anyone wearing a mask. I mean, in the buses and in the trains, you are obliged to do it, but in the street, supermarket, no, no one. I think maybe because people here are less physical in the sense of hugging and kissing. I think that's the
I was
main
gonna say,
difference,
I was
maybe.
exactly thinking about that. Is that Dutch people in general are already more distant, while Palestinians, they have this tendency to be closer together, to kiss and hug more. And here, if we have a wedding, we have an incredible amount of people, five, six, 700 people. In my wedding, we had 700 people. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I guess my family-in-law is very popular. Or they all wanted to see the foreigner, Ajnabiya bride. I don't know. They all showed up, the whole village.
Exactly.
But here, all the weddings and everything, and I think, and that's maybe was crazy here, is that the infrastructure that the Israeli government already put in place in the West Bank, we live so close to the West Bank, basically on the border area. So all the checkpoints that were already there and the wall that is already there to control the freedom of movement of Palestinians was now used in the pandemic time and is still being used to stop the movement of people. So I found it very ironic that
Mm.
especially in the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't have many cases at all because everything, yani within a
Mhm.
daytime, the whole place, the whole West Bank was closed down, nobody in, nobody out. But now, after they opened up the things, it was like a quick explosion because everybody was waiting. They had wanted to do their wedding, so they had to postpone it, and they all did everything in June, weddings, and in July we started. So now we are back from tomorrow evening. We will be back in a lockdown until the 12th of October. So yeah, we will see how that will play out. It's really nice talking to you. I really enjoyed having a conversation with you about our experiences in each other's countries. And really, thank you so much for spending some time.
I also had so much fun talking to you, Kristel.
And because we know that you can only really understand another country by its language, every episode we end with teaching you something in Arabic. And Louisa, my daughter, is going to help me because her Arabic is much better than mine. Louisa, what is that you're drinking?
Water.
Oh, water. How do you say water in Arabic?
مية.
And if you want to drink, for example, milk, what is milk in Arabic?
حليب.
And if you want a cup of tea?
بدي شاي.
And if you want a cup of coffee?
بدي قهوة.
And if you want to drink juice?
جوس. عصير.
And if you want to drink a beer?
بدي بيرة.
بدك بيرة? No بيرة for you yet, حبيبتي. مية.
مية.
حليب.
حليب.
شاي.
شاي.
قهوة.
قهوة.
عصير.
عصير.
بيرة.
بيرة.
شكرا هادي. شكرا Louisa. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Bye. Next time, another word in Arabic. You have been listening to Stories from Palestine, which is a podcast focusing on history, cultural heritage and stories from Palestine. You can subscribe to Stories from Palestine on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or you can search on the Buzzsprout website, Stories from Palestine, and there you find all the other podcast platforms that this podcast is listed on. On my website, storiesfrompalestine.info, you find the links to my social media accounts and extra information, links and photos that I upload for each episode. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, then maybe you would feel like you'd buy me a coffee or a sandwich falafel. I mean, any kind of support really helps me in continuing making new episodes. And there is a very easy way to do it because I now have a Ko-fi account. You can open your browser and just type ko-fi.com/stories from Palestine. And on my Ko-fi page, you will find lots of extras, lots of nice extra information. You can chip in there with a couple of bucks, and then you become part of my Palestine podcast community. I look forward to you joining again next week for another episode of Stories from Palestine.